But let's bring in now former special agent in charge for ATF, Bernard Zapor. Bernard, I'd like to show you the clip of the student that was on the scene who spoke to a reporter. Can we bring that clip up?
The cops showed up very fast, like almost instantly. Tons and tons of cops showed up instantly. I mean, there were probably 20 cops within 5 minutes, just right there. But then, as well as the 100 that were out here.
Yeah. But did you see many shooters, like multiple shooters?
I didn't see multiple. There was only the one that was in here. But what I've heard is that they had one at each entrance. Mm-hmm. So I think that like this was the guy on this side, and then there was probably one on that side and one on that side.
Oh. So nobody was going to get out, essentially.
Yeah, they had it planned. I mean, it seems like a coordinated thing. It was definitely coordinated.
Now that's secondhand.
Yes.
Somebody told him. So, and like you were saying, it sounded like you were saying 3 exits.
Yeah.
But we don't know
but
that
we don't know
because he didn't see it.
Yes. So, Bernard, what is your take, given the student that we have there at the scene and all of the initial reporting at this time?
Well, one has to look at the horrible U.S. history with these shootings. You go all the way back to 1998 with the Columbine High School shooting. That was sort of the one that grabbed the nation's attention at the time. Those were 2 coordinated shooters. One of the massive lessons that were learned there were that at the time, law enforcement waited for a coordinated response, like a tactical team to have a command post. And in the meantime, kids were being murdered inside. And so the prevailing tactic for an active shooter scene is the first officer that gets there, they engage whatever shooter they can find. And the deployment on this is massive. It goes to every agency in the area. They don't worry about initial coordination. They worry about stopping the shooter because that's the only way anything can progress. Nothing happens till the shooters are put down. And so, there's a lot of chaos because you're getting different information. 911 calls are coming in from different parts of the campus, from multiple sources. The students are all saying stuff. The people that are closest to the victims are highly emotional and screaming, so it's hard to discern. But you're going to get a massive response. I think one of the things that needs to be noted today is that this is a very quick response. It was very quick that they got a shooter in custody and 1 deceased. I mean, the response times on these, especially for a complex campus as large as FSU, it's a really tribute to where the nation's policing in response to this, and unfortunately, we're only talking about the response, not the prevention, is improving, even though we have casualties and victims today.
Do you want to talk about prevention, if you have something in mind regarding that? And we want to make clear also, and this may play into why the press conference may have been delayed until 4 o'clock, as we understand it. There's still a shelter-in-place order throughout the campus. So they may not be through. I think you mentioned this kind of thing, Kelly. They may be still making efforts to make sure that the campus is secure. But did you want to address the prevention issue, sir? Because like you said, the response it sounded like as quick as it could be. And by the way, I always consider these people heroes when they go toward the shooting, as they did in Nashville with those school shootings. This is a case where they went and responded as quickly as they could, it sounds like. This will all be fleshed out. But what kind of prevention do you think, what steps should be taken?
Yes, they're absolutely heroes, and especially where we're coming off the tail end of an era in U.S. history where we demonize law enforcement. We got to remember what their purpose is, and that is for public safety, as demonstrated today. In terms of prevention, it's probably one of the biggest challenges we have as a nation, and we have as a society. It's the balance of our freedoms, it's a balance of our rights, but at the same time, there's tells here we have a mental health, emotional health system that is broken and fractured, and people seek care, or they're not mandatory to receive care, that are demonstrating certain conditions that are very dangerous, and they may actually be verbalizing some of their intentions. You have that as one component. You have people that are speaking out about their hatred of certain groups, demographics, races, religions, and so there's so much noise in social media, and we have to contend with that. And then obviously, in our society, firearms are prevalent here, and they're always going to be. I mean, we're approaching 500 million of firearms in the U.S. That's part of our country, and The Supreme Court has spoken to the Second Amendment. It's a very complex, layered situation we have that's unique to us. And it's really going to take leadership and have people from behavioral health care, law enforcement, society, our legislators, and citizens to talk about what we can do, at least have a screen, a net to filter down some of this. And I would think the biggest challenge, of course, is when there is things like noise on social media and discerning when somebody is actually going to hurt others. It's a challenging process. Unfortunately, there is not an apparent solution. There's certainly not a law that's going to create this that can prevent this from happening. I would see it as we have a societal, cultural change that has to take place, but it's going to take the will of the nation to get there. The answer to that exactly, I don't know. It's going to take a lot of us together, all of us as a country and a nation, to decide how we want to have our public safety and how we want to be safe.
There is now new reports that there are multiple victims. So AP is reporting there's multiple victims, so it's retracting that 5 are dead and 4 are injured. They say 6 might be injured, 1 may be critically injured, that there is one shooter is in custody. The initial reports was that there were 2 shooters. This is all really messy right now because there hasn't been an official police briefing, and all what the AP is getting is on background sources familiar. What does the police know right now? Do they know how many victims? Do they know if there was 1 or if there were 2 shooters? What information have they collected thus far that they've chosen not to release publicly yet?
You have several processes going on right now that's paramount to law enforcement. Number 1 priority is to ensure that there's no additional threats. So that is clearing the campus and clearing the immediate area and having all this information coming out. They're trying to identify the victims, both injured and deceased, and if they actually do have shooters involved. And a third process is to determine their association. They need to know that now because that helps them solve the number 1 priority, which is to ensure that the campus is safe and that this thing is resolved in its immediate threat. I would guess they probably have identification of most of the victims. That may not be the case, but people were at school or work that lost their life today or were injured, and they're going to have identification. Some of that stuff will be readily available. If they find a vehicle, for example, it's a goldmine of information if it's related to a shooter. So they probably have identifications. They probably have started to contact family members, and unfortunately people are going to suffer immensely from this. And so what they want to do is they want to be able to say that FSU campus is safe, that they believe that this event is limited to this 1 or 2 people that caused it and that they're investigating. And they might even want to be so far as to be able to identify who the person in custody is, because they can do that, depending on how the impact would be to their investigation. But they want to speak when they can say that the campus is safe above all.
Yeah, and by the way, this is why these pressers are important, to make sure that the proper information is out there. I've seen varying reports here too. Unfortunately, we don't have a reporter right there, and I got news for you. I've been on scenes after shootings. If the police officers, if the PIO doesn't tell you what's going on, you don't know. So that's why we depend on getting that information. That's why these pressers are so important. Obviously, the relationship with the police can give that information to reporters, but we await the presser. Now, I understand it'll be at 4 o'clock. Let me ask you about an issue here, that in the South you have a culture that the Second Amendment's important to a lot of people in the South. That doesn't mean everybody wants to carry, but when you have a gun-free zone, you really rely on the police to protect you. Should a campus like this be a gun-free zone, as it is? I'm not saying it should be or it shouldn't be, but from your experience, is there an advantage or disadvantage for law enforcement to deal with situations like this, depending on whether it is gun-free or not?
You know, I often teach workplace violence and active shooter prevention, and I've come to, through looking at, number of cases in the last 2 decades of mass casualty events in the United States, that anytime we have a concentration of people, whether it's a music venue, retail venue, academic campus, in my belief, there has to be a dedicated resource for the one purpose. And this includes places of worship they might have a congregation this Sunday of 1,000 people. I think it's important that we face the reality of this as a possibility for whatever causation. And they have the ability to respond with one intent, and that's to stop a shooter. And they can get there within the 4 to 5 minute window that it would take law enforcement. Of course, that response time is very dependent on where you are in the country and the resources around you. But anytime we have a large gathering of people, there should be a pure dedicated source to stopping a shooter, which I'm not talking about private security that's walking around checking doors. I'm talking about highly trained people. They're expensive. They're in plain clothes, and they have one job, and that's to stop a horrible event like this. And would that be something that we could do? Absolutely. You could train them. You could certify them. You could have them be licensed police officers or off-duty police officers that are trained for this. It should be a requirement in our large public venues that there is that resource, as unfortunate as it is for that one person. It's the break glass in the event of a war equivalent.
Yeah, I mean, but with a campus that is so large, how many of these officers do you need to make a difference? But college is expensive. There is certain responsibility that FSU has as well. We're gearing up for this press conference at 4 o'clock, and that will be with local law enforcement. Do you believe that FSU needs to make a statement or join the law enforcement? And where do you think Ron DeSantis is? Do you think he will be addressing Floridians today after this shooting as well?
I would say yes to all of it. And I commend the campus police and the local police for their response to this, because the amount of time it took to resolve this in such a complex environment was commendable, unfortunate as it is. And we should have the expectation of all of our public safety agencies to train to that level.
What is the adrenaline like when you get a situation like this, when you are in law enforcement? You're trained to deal with these kinds of situations. Tell me what your feelings are, what your psychology is when you encounter them.
This is a reliance on training. It has to be muscle memory, just like our United States military forces. They train for this so that your body goes into programming and you are not overwhelmed with emotions or adrenaline or anything else. You have a systematic approach. You've trained this. You've been in scenarios where possible eventualities, challenges have been brought to you. So you get somewhat of a functional tunnel vision, and they work on solving the immediate problem. And you rely on training as soon as something goes really bad. And so the training emphasis, it just can't be strong enough. It's the most important thing. And they do it for all of their work. I mean, professional law enforcement officers train often. They have a lot of rigorous standards, and that makes them more professional. That takes their ego out of the equation, makes them more effective. And so training for something like this is commonplace across the United States at every level of policing, because the expectation is it can happen in any venue, regardless, and it's something that we should be prepared for.
Bernard, according to that one student, there were 20 cops on the scene within 5 minutes of the shooting taking place. How would you qualify that response?
I would say it was what is needed, because if they have those resources to get there, they have to get there until the problem is solved. And the problem is solved. The initial problem is stopping the shooting. That is the priority for every law enforcement officer in the area, and their dispatch is going to go accordingly. And then also, if they're getting a call about shots being fired, somebody's screaming, there's a guy running around shooting or whatever, and it's a place of worship, a college campus, a mall, or anything like that, we know what that means. Americans, unfortunately, know what that means, and law enforcement certainly does, and they train for that expectation. I can guarantee you that all the local law enforcement has coordinated with FSU campus police in the past. They have worked this scenario before, and they knew what they were doing when they got there, and we're lucky we have them.
Bernard, yep, absolutely. Bernard Zapor, thank you so much for being with us today.
Have a great day.
Stay with us.